my fellow readers, Krista and Jennifer. We haven't met before, but Jennifer and I have been hanging out on Twitter together for a while. It's a real honor to read with them. The first book I wrote, Stubborn Season, was about mental illness in the family, and then Radiant City was about post-traumatic stress disorder and violence, and Our Daily Bread was about child abuse and now alcoholism. So another fun book from Lauren B. Davis is what you got here. But I wrote this book largely because it's a speculative look at what a day in my own life might have turned out to be had I not gotten sober 19 years ago. And boy, nothing will fill you with gratitude faster than imagining, what might have happened if you kept drinking all these years. So to me, this book was a real, it was a real sort of return to a very dark place in my life, and also a way to sort of brighten the day here. Because sometimes you forget, you've been sober for a while, and you kind of forget just how awful it really was. And that's not a good thing to forget. So, there comes Colleen. And a lot of people have said to me, well, why not write a memoir? And, I could have written a memoir, I suppose. But I sometimes think that the facts don't always tell the truth. And I wanted to give myself an opportunity to imagine a bit wider and take in experiences that were not necessarily just mine. So some of the book, there's no doubt, there's a little bit of autobiography in there. And my friends who are in the audience, and you know who you are, you know which parts are autobiographical and which aren't. There is a scene in which Colleen projectile vomits in the Chicken Deli in Toronto. I never did that. Although I did do a reading one night, and someone in the audience put up their hand and said, no, that was me. So my people have arrived. They're here. So if you read the book, I will leave it to you to figure out which parts are autobiographical and which aren't. But last night, if some of you were at the reading last night, and some of the writers there were talking about the importance of humor in dark times. And there's no doubt that there's a wee bit of darkness in this book. But I also hope that there's some humor in it. And so if you feel at any point while reading this book inclined to chuckle, guffaw, or chortle, do not be afraid, you're reading it properly. So let us begin with the world as Colleen sees it when she wakes up in the morning. It was Monday morning, and Colleen Kerrigan woke up wondering why she was chewing on a dirty old sock. This would be a time where if you felt like chortling, you could feel good. She tried to pull her tongue from the roof of her mouth. It peeled away, dry and swollen. Her fingers told her she didn't actually have a sock in there, which was something of a relief. She must have been sleeping with her mouth open, probably snoring like a wildebeest. The late October sun, butting up against the window, barely made a dent in the murk. She rarely shut the curtains because her 8th floor window looked out onto the parking lot and the old Dominion coal and wood silo. Besides, who wanted to peek into the windows of a nearly 50-year-old woman? The man's voice on the radio said the high today would be 7 degrees Celsius with a brisk wind and the possibility of showers. His voice was sharp and irritatingly upbeat. She shut off the clock with the radio with a slap of her hand and dragged her legs over the side of the bed, her head fuzzy, her stomach churning. She'd slept in her t-shirt and sweatpants, which she hadn't intended. In fact, she didn't exactly remember going to bed. She hadn't even bothered to take off her bra, and the wire must have dug into her left breast as she slept. It hurt. Or maybe it was cancer. Good morning, world. Her eyes settled on the framed postcard of Dylan Thomas's writing shed at Larne, which she kept on the bedside table. The tiny room, the whitewashed walls, the simple desk and chair, the photos, the crumpled bits of paper, the bottle, the astonishing work Thomas created there. This was Colleen's idea of perfection. If she concentrated on the image hard enough, it would manifest itself in her own life. She hadn't written anything in a long time, but she would again. Of this she was sure. Beside the photo lay the Bible. Many of the Psalms she knew by heart. They felt like a doorway into the world of spirit she was sure lived just beyond her fingertips, just out of reach, but nonetheless beckoned to her. The Bible was now open to Psalm 38. My wounds are loathsome and corrupt because of my foolishness. Sometimes the divine had a wicked sense of humor. As she sat up, her head and the room spun. She held onto the bed for a moment until it righted. Was she coming down with something? Her sinuses were painful and her throat a bit sore. An ear infection, perhaps. That would account for the dizziness. Her tongue still felt woolen. Maybe she should just go back to bed and call in sick, but she'd called in sick too many times these past few months. Her head ached and her bladder felt about to burst. She limped into the bathroom. Her knee was bothering her again. And as she sat in the toilet, she noticed new bruises on her arms and legs. Where had they come from? She must fight off the hounds of hell in her sleep. She reached for the toilet paper and her left elbow pinged sharply. She cupped it with her right hand. It was tender just at the joint. When had she banged that? She was going to have to start taking better care of herself. When she finished, she made her way down the hall to the kitchen, where dishes crowded the sink and the yellow linoleum stuck to the soles of her feet. She drank club soda from the bottle in great gulps, hoping it would do its work and settle her stomach. The clock on the stove said it was nearly 7:30, which meant she had to rush or she'd never get to work on time. She'd been far too late, far too often. On the counter, next to the hideous green cookie jar with the painted cherries, this had been her mother's, stood a vodka bottle. Colleen froze, the club soda bottle still pressed to her lips. Some of it dribbled down her chin and she wiped it away with the back of her hand. She stared at the vodka bottle. She picked it up and jiggled it, hoping it was merely an illusion, some trick of the light making it look nearly empty. It should be at least half full. But no, a mere inch or so sloshed about in the bottom. This simply was not possible. She didn't drink that much yesterday, surely. She must be losing her mind. And she wondered if she'd miss it. She put down the bottle. Yes, she thought, I've rather enjoyed my mind. And she thought, I will not drink today.